Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video we've got a couple of things to talk about as we're going to start our first ever off-season preview videos. Today we're going to be talking about the Rangers, Penguins, Lightning, and the Red Wings. How do they fare in the off-season? And how are they looking going into this upcoming season? Are they playoff teams? Are they teams who are most likely going to miss the playoffs? I'm going to go over that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Talker channel. First, I'd like to kick things off today by just discussing that today is the 1 year anniversary of starting this YouTube channel. I'm quite surprised that it's been 1 year already, but definitely I like doing these videos. I'm really happy with all of the progress we've made on this channel so far. I think we've made a lot of progress since our very first video a year ago. When I started these videos, I liked doing them. I was hoping I would be doing quite well. I like doing these sorts of videos, but definitely all of your guys' support have definitely helped me continue to do these videos for you guys. So thanks for all of the support. We have over 130 subscribers on this channel now. And let's see if we can get over 200 in the not too distant future. So thanks for all of the support over the past year, and let's hope we can continue the amount of success we've had over the first year in year number 2. But thank you for all the support, and it has been a year since we started my channel, so I want to thank you for all the support, and hopefully we can continue to do really well in year 2. So thanks for all of that. But today's video, I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently here. So for the next couple of weeks, before the season starts, I'm going to start talking about some season previews about some teams. So basically, over the next couple of weeks, I'll still have my regular videos talking about trade rumors and some news, talking about like signings and injuries and stuff on Tuesday and Saturday as my usual videos. But on my Thursday video, the middle video of the week that I usually do, I'm going to be starting to talk about some season previews and off-season reviews. So basically, I'm just going to be talking about how some of these teams did in the off-season, what they did to improve their team from last year, what players they lost, what players did they gain, how does their roster sort of look like right now before the season starts, and do I think they're a playoff team? Where do I think they're going to finish right now in their standings? So I'm going to be doing 2 separate videos here, one here talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins and New York Rangers, and another one I'll be posting later to the channel talking about the Detroit Red Wings and Tampa Bay Lightning. So basically I'm going to be talking about 4 teams a week, so for the foreseeable future, on my second video of the week, I'm going to be talking about the off-season review and the season preview for these teams. I'm starting with some of the teams who I think are most likely done for the off-season. Like they most likely will be done in the off-season. So I would put a team like Tampa this week, who is basically done and not going to be making any more moves, in my opinion. And then I'd be doing one closer to the season starts with a team like a Calgary or a Winnipeg who could still make a move before then. So basically that's what I'm going to be doing over the next week. So I hope you guys like this new series I'm going to be starting with, checking out the off-season review and the season preview for some of these teams. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first we're going to go over to the Pittsburgh Penguins here. So last year, the Pittsburgh Penguins were not an overly fantastic team. They were a team who was competing for a playoff spot with teams like the Panthers and the Islanders and the Sabres. They were going into the final 3 days of the regular season and had their fate in their own hands. The Penguins had the opportunity late in the season to make the playoffs. All they needed to do was win 2 games against the Chicago Blackhawks and Columbus Blue Jackets, who were 2 of the bottom 3 NHL teams at that time, to pass the Florida Panthers and make the Stanley Cup playoffs. And they blew it. They lost in regulation to the Hawks 5-2, and then they would lose in overtime to the Jackets 3-2, and they would wind up finishing 1 point back of the Florida Panthers for the last playoff spot. So really, really sad for the Penguin fans. I know it was quite surprising that they were to lose to the Hawks, who at that point were the lowest team in the NHL, and then the Blue Jackets, who were the lowest team in the Eastern Conference. So it's quite surprising that they lost to both of those teams, but they definitely missed out quite a bit. 1 point shy of Florida for a playoff spot. So definitely it was heartbreaking for Penguins fans, but they wound up missing the playoffs. So they went into this offseason, they got new GM Kyle Dubas. He looked like he did quite a good job with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Went to this offseason looking for some help. They needed some more bottom 6 help. Last year, that bottom 6 was really non-existent for the Pittsburgh Penguins, especially that third line, which was until the trade line, Carter, McGinn, and Kapanen. McGinn and Kapanen were moved before the deadline, but that third line was absolutely atrocious. They also look to change up their blue line a little bit. I thought they would probably move some goaltenders around too, so they had a lot of things to do this offseason. So, lost a couple of significant pieces on their team. As you can see here, here's the offseason additions and the offseason losses. So basically the losses, they lose Jason Zucker, who was a middle six forward, Nick Bonino, Ryan Poehling, Danton Heinen, Josh Archibald, all bottom six forwards, as well as Mikael Granlund, who was a middle six forward but didn't really fit in well with Pittsburgh. They also lose Dmitry Kuliakov, who was an in-season acquisition as a third-pair defenseman. They lose Jan Rutta, who is a third-pair defenseman, and then they also lose Brian Dumoulin and Jeff Petrie, who are top four defensemen for them. And then they lose backup goalie Casey DeSmith and third-string goalie Dustin Tokarski. So, all in all, they lost a couple of pretty big pieces. I think Zucker was probably the biggest one of them. You also lost Dumoulin, Petrie, Granlund. So there was a couple of them. Some of those guys were dealt in the Erik Karlsson trade, and some of those guys were left via free agency. So definitely, they lost a couple of big pieces, but they did get a couple of pieces as well. They added forward Riley Smith, who should definitely replace Jason Zucker as a top six forward. They also added Rem Pitlick, Matt Nieto, Noel Acciari, Lars Eller, Vinny Hinostroza, Andreas Johnsson on the forward group. Defensively, they added Ryan Graves, Erik Karlsson in the Karlsson deal, Will Butcher, as well as on the goaltending side, added Nedeljkovic and Hellberg from Detroit. So basically, all in all, this team did quite well, I think, in the offseason. They were able to replace on the defensive end Dumoulin and Petrie with Graves and Karlsson. That top four looks completely different and a lot better, in my opinion, now. Their depth is not as good, but they still brought in a guy like Will Butcher to replace guys like Jan Rutta or Dmitry Kuliakov. They still have guys like Ty Smith and Pierre-Olivier Joseph right now, so I have no doubt they're going to be better defensively. The goaltending situation is a bit better now. Nedeljkovic, I think, is a slight upgrade on the Smith. Not too much of an upgrade, but a slight upgrade. As for Hellberg, he's definitely a major improvement as the third stringer on Tokarski. And with Jerry's injury history, that makes it a lot more easier if Jerry does go down with injury. I'm surprised Jerry did re-sign with the Penguins. I did think that they might go after a guy like John Gibson or Connor Hellebuyck, but they do wind up keeping Jerry. So that was a good move there. The forward group, they got Riley Smith to replace Jason Zucker, which isn't too bad. Granlund is gone. I don't think that's too much of a surprise. They also had a couple of depth pieces like Bonino, Poehling, I think was a bit of a surprise. Heinen, Archibald. So just a couple of depth forwards who leave. Not overly significant. And I think guys like Andreas Johnsson, Lars Eller, Noel Acciari, Rem Pitlick, Matt Nieto will all be able to replace them in the bottom six. So they replaced their bottom six with some more guys. I think a lot of those guys are a little bit older than I think I would have liked, but they're all a lot more reliable. They're reliable. In my opinion, that's a fantastic additions for the Penguins in the offseason. Adding all of these guys, Pitlick in the Karlsson deal, the rest of them on free agency, Smith in the Vegas deal. So definitely, I think this team looks really good. Their offense looks, I think, a bit better. Their depth scoring should definitely be a little more consistent this year. Their top four on the defense end looks great, and even though they're not a very deep team on the defensive end, they still have a couple of guys in Ty Smith and Pierre-Olivier Joseph who should remain as solid NHL forwards. Their goaltending situation looks a bit better, so in my opinion, I think that this team did quite well in the offseason. I know some of my problems with the team last year was that they really didn't get that much depth scoring. I think they should be able to get a little more depth scoring with this year's lineup, so that's pretty good. The Penguins, I think, had a pretty good draft. Their three top picks in the 2023 draft were number 14 in the first round, selecting Braden Yeager, number 27 in the third round, selecting Paine-Niemi, and number 14 in the fifth round, selecting Elian. So some pretty good prospects there. They didn't have too much draft capital. That's why they only had one pick in the first 2 rounds and 2 picks in the first 4 rounds. But the picks that they used, I think, were pretty good. So the Penguins had, all in all, a really good offseason, a really good draft. I think this team is set up really well. So at this current point in time, based on my projections, here's what I'm projecting to be the current lineup for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So Gensel's going to be out for the first little bit of the season. I do have him in LTIR at this point in time, but it's quite possible he doesn't go in LTIR because he might only miss like 5 or 6 games. So if that's the case, then I would expect one of Jeff Carter, Andreas Johnsson, or Alex Nylander to be moved down to the minors. 2 of those guys, I think, would both have to be moved down. But on top of that, you've got a top line of Raquel, Crosby, and Rust, which you can easily put Guillory when he gets back. You have Samuel Poulin playing with Malkin and Riley Smith. You have Drew O'Connor playing with Lars Eller and Matt Nieto. And you have Rem Pitlick playing with Noel Acciari and Alex Nylander. On the defensive end, you have Graves and Letang as the top pair, Peterson and Karlsson as the second pair, and Joseph and Smith as the third pair. You have Jari as the starter, Nedeljkovic as the backup, and Carter, Janssen, and Ruhwedel as their spares. And like I said, I think they could move two of Carter, Janssen, and Nylander before the season starts if they were to not place Guentzel on long-term injury reserve. And at that point, have one of those guys be on the fourth line, and then just have Ruhwedel as their spare with a 21-man roster. And they should still be cap compliant at that point. So some really good lineup situation there for the Penguins. They should have a couple of guys battling for roster spots. I think Smith will make the roster. I also think Poulin will make the roster. I think this team looks really, really good. So in my opinion, that's a fantastic team, and I think that will be a really good team. At this current point in time, to finish up my offseason preview for the Penguins, currently at this point in time, I might change it for my season preview right before the start of the season, but for the time being, have the Penguins finishing with a 43-29-10 record for 96 points, ending up 4th in the Metro Division, and being the first wildcard in the Eastern Conference, having 5 more points than they did last year. So in my opinion, I do still have them being a playoff team, and I have them competing with the team we're about to talk about for 3rd in the Metro. And in my opinion, I give the Pittsburgh Penguins a B- on the offseason grade. They did pretty good. They improved their defense, in my opinion. Their goaltending looks a little bit deeper. I think they did really good. Not fantastic, not anything flashy, but they did do, I think, a really good job. So in my opinion, that's a fantastic move there by the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I'll give them a B- in the offseason grade. Going over to New York Rangers now. They finished with 107 points in the regular season. Good enough for 3rd in the Metro and 5th in the Eastern Conference. So they had a really good regular season. If anyone was not predicting Boston to go to the Stanley Cup Final, a lot of them had the Rangers going to the Stanley Cup Final. But the Rangers would wind up going to Jersey in round 1 of the first round series. They would win the first 2, lose the next 3, they would win Game 6, forcing Game 7, in which they would lose. So after having a 2-0 series lead against the Devils, they wound up falling flat and would lose the series in 7 games. So not a fantastic job there by the Rangers for a team who was looking to make a deep run. They fired their head coach. They brought new head coach Pierre Laviolette to be the new bench boss in New York. And this offseason, they did quite well. They did lose a couple of key guys. They lost Yaroslav Halak, who's still a UFA, as their backup goalie. They lost Libor Hayek, who was a depth defenseman. He's also UFA right now. They lost Nico Mikkola to Florida, who was a solid third-pair defenseman for them. They lost Ryan Carpenter to San Jose, who was a good depth forward for them. They lost Will Lockwood to Florida, good depth forward again. They lost Tyler Mott, who's still UFA, good bomb 6 forward. And then they lost 2 top 6 forwards in Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko. Tarasenko signed in Ottawa, Kane's still UFA. So they lost a couple of key pieces on that forward group, but they did do some really good things to replace them. They didn't make any significant, substantial trades this offseason, so these guys are free agent signings. They brought in Blake Wheeler, 1 year, $800,000, a fantastic deal in my opinion, to be a good top 6 forward. They also brought in Nick Bonino to be a solid bomb 6 forward. They brought in Tyler Pitlick, who's going to be a good addition on the bomb 6 as well. They got Belzile and Nash, who should be good depth forwards and definitely be call-up options if they run into injuries. They also brought in on the defensive end Gustafsson and Mackey, who should both challenge for the third pair role that's open still on the defensive end. They also brought in Mac Hollowell, who should be a good depth defenseman. And they brought in Jonathan Quick on a cheap deal, former Kings starter, who I think should be fantastic as Igor Shesterkin's backup. So in my opinion, the Rangers did fantastic in the offseason. Now they replaced Halak with Quick, which I think is a major upgrade, and Quick should definitely give Shesterkin a couple more nights off this upcoming season. They also got Gustafsson and Mackey, who I think, along with a guy like Zach Jones, should all challenge to be on the left side of the third pair with a guy like Braden Schneider, behind their fantastic top 4 of Miller, Trouba, Fox, and Lindgren. On the forward group, they lost 2 top right shot forwards. Wheeler should definitely be able to replace at least one of Kane or Tarasenko. The other, I think they'll try and replace internally, whether that be a Kako or Lafreniere. I think they'll have to move one of those younger guys up into the lineup. They get a couple of decent bomb 6 forwards. I think Bonino and Pitlick should definitely be options to play on the fourth line. I think Belzile and Nash could be spares or could be sent down to the minors and called up if there's injuries. So all in all, I think this Rangers team did pretty good this offseason. They were able to replace some of their depth from the forward group. They were able to get a really good backup. They were able to bring in some competition for the last open spot on their defensive pair. I think they did really good. I think they could have done maybe a tiny bit more, but they also don't have too much cap space. So given all of that fact, I think they're really good. And I think a lot of this season is going to ride on how much of an improvement guys like Kakko and Lafreniere make. They haven't done fantastic. They've been mostly on the third pair. I think there's a shot there for at least one of Kakko or Lafreniere to grab a top 6 spot this year. So if one of those guys can step up, grab a top 6 spot, whether it be with the guys like Kreider and Zibanejad or Panarin on one of those lines, and they can produce well, I think there could be a step in the right direction for the Rangers. So it's going to be interesting to see, but definitely I think they've had some really good offseason additions after losing a couple of key guys. The top 3 picks for the Rangers, just like the Penguins, not too much in the way of draft capital they had this year. They used their first round pick, number 23 overall, to select Gabriel Pro, which I think was a fantastic addition, a pretty good steal. They used their third round pick, which was number 26 in the third round, to select left shot defenseman Drew Fortescue. And then they used number 24 pick in the 5th round to select Larson, so who's another defenseman. So some decent additions there. Once again, not too much draft capital. They didn't have too many draft picks, but the players they did draft were pretty good players. So in my opinion, I think the Rangers did really well in the draft. In my opinion, they had a pretty good offseason. Here's my current projection for the roster as long as everyone's healthy. So I have Kreider playing with Zibanejad and Wheeler as their top line. I have Panarin playing with youngsters Hedl and Kakko on the second line. I have rookie Brennan Othmann making the roster, playing with guys like Vincent Trocheck and Alexis Lafreniere. I have Jimmy Vesey playing with Nick Bonino on the 4th line and Barclay Goodrow. On the defensive end, I once again have Lindgren and Fox as the top pair, with K'Andre Miller and Jacob Trouba as their second pair. On the third pair, I have Erik Gustafsson playing with Braden Schneider. I think there's a chance in the not distant future Schneider passes Trouba on the depth charts. I have Shesterkin starting in net, quick backing up. I don't think that's too much of a surprise. And then I have Jake Leschyshyn, Tyler Pitlick, and Zach Jones all being the spares for the New York Rangers. At that point in time, they would have about $2.19 million in cap space. They do still have to sign Alexis Lafreniere to his new deal, so if they can sign him to somewhere under $2.1 million, maybe like a 1 or 2 year deal, they wouldn't have to make any moves and they could run with the 23-man roster. So in my opinion, that's a fantastic offseason. The team looks really good. If you look at this team pre-trade deadline, I think it's a lot better than last year's team. I think this team should be able to do some damage still next year. In my opinion, at this current point in time, I have the New York Rangers having a 48-25-9 record for 105 points. I have them finishing 3rd in the Metro and 4th in the Eastern Conference, only putting up 2 less points than they did last year. So I have them putting up similar numbers than they did last year. And in my opinion, I think they have a B- record this offseason. They did some pretty good things. They added Blake Wheeler and Jonathan Quick at really cheap contracts, which I think was fantastic. Quick's a major upgrade on Halak. Wheeler should be able to fit in the top 6. They replaced some of their bottom 6 forwards with some pretty good guys. They got some competition for their third pair left side replacement. But I definitely do think that the really big question will be how much improvement do the Rangers have in their younger guys. I think Lafreniere, Kakko, maybe even Hedl have to improve this year to become better. And I think if they can start to grab top 6 spots on that team, they should be fantastic. And I also think a young guy like Brennan Othmann should definitely be able to nab a top 9 role, in my opinion, for the Rangers. So in my opinion, that's what the Rangers lineup looks like. I think they had a fantastic offseason. I would give them a B-, in my opinion, for their offseason grade, and I think they should definitely be around the same spot as they were last year. Over 100 points, 3rd in the Metro, and a team was still really ready to compete for a playoff spot. So definitely let me know down in the comments what you think. Did you like the Penguins offseason moves they made this year? Did you like the Rangers offseason moves they made this year? What do you think of my projected 23-man lineups for the two teams? What do you think of my projected point totals for the two teams? And definitely let me know what you think down in the comments. Do both of them warrant a B- grade? Did they have a better offseason, do you think? Did they have a worse offseason, did you think? Let me know down in the comments. But that's all I'm going to talk about in this video. Stay tuned for a video coming up later on in the day as I'm going to talk about the Detroit Red Wings and Tampa Bay Lightning. So definitely don't forget to check that out. That's all I'm going to talk about for today. So don't forget to like this video, and if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so definitely check that out. Once again, thank you for helping us keep this channel going for the first year. Hopefully we can have some really good stuff in year 2 as well. And that's all I'm going to talk about for today. See you guys soon.